It is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call this meeting to order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, because we do have some members remote, I'm just going to do a quick roll call. Matt.
Upton present.
Roy here.
Jefferson present.
And Ray is joining us Zoom.
Me too.
Great. And then we don't see Emery in attendees though. Okay, great.
Nope, not yet.
We do have a couple of announcements. If it rains tomorrow, the Grafton Farmers Market will be held inside the gymnasium at the Senior Center. As always, the hours are from 2 to 6 p.m. The 2022 Summer Concert Series continues this week with the Beatles for sale. Come to the Common to see the band tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. India's Independence Day will be celebrated Saturday, August 20th at 9 a.m. with a flag-raising ceremony by the IAGB at the Grafton Municipal Center. The flags of India and the United States will be raised to commemorate India's independence and celebrate Indian American culture and traditions. Registration for the Grafton Recreation's Fall and Winter program opens on August 23rd at 9 a.m. In addition to the sought-after preschool soccer and grades 1 through 12 basketball, many new programs will be offered, including adult tennis and women's basketball. Visit graftonrec.com to sign up. We have no public hearings, and first up for appointment consideration is Nicole Ether for the Economic Development Commission. She is joining us via Zoom. Hello, Nicole.
Hi.
So could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in joining the Economic Development Commission?
Sure. So I've lived in Grafton for about 6 years now. My husband actually grew up here, and his family has lived in the community for several decades. So I have a lot of close community ties. My background is actually in retail, and most recently in corporate retail. I have been a director of merchandise planning for the last 8 years at a company called Rue Gilt Group. We run two different e-com sites, RueLaLa.com and Gilt.com. So fully invested in running that business. Last year, we drove about $400 million in sales demand, and I managed a team of about 7 people. So I just felt like my business background and the fact that I want to get more involved in the community and help our community grow and develop would be a perfect place for me to sit on the Economic Development Committee.
Very nice. Does the board have any questions? Yes, Sandy.
If you had to, off the cuff, could you give us your thoughts on some areas where we could, possibly improve recruitment or anything like that?
I mean, I would definitely love to see some more businesses come to the Grafton area. I know personally, there are times where I have to go outside of our local community to shop or go out to eat, things like that. So anything that I think we can draw attention to or draw businesses here to drive our, smaller economy would be good.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none, I can take a motion.
Sure. I move the board vote to appoint Nicole Ethier to the Economic Development Commission.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor by roll call. Matt?
Upton, aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Need I?
Okay. Declare the motion carried. Congratulations, Nicole. You'll receive a letter from the town clerk's office with instructions on how to be sworn in the near future.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Nicole.
much.
Thank you.
Up next is the Veterans Advisory Committee. We have Holly McCormick with us, also via Zoom. Hello, Holly.
Hello, good evening. May I do a comms check, please?
You sound great.
Yep, we can hear you.
Awesome, thank you. So yes, I'm definitely interested in being part of the Veterans Advisory Committee. So I'm assuming you want to hear a little background about myself, or?
That'd be lovely.
Go for it.
Okay, my name is Holly McCormick, born and raised in Grafton, in the Glass House right on Old Westboro Road. I joined active duty Air Force in 2002, right when I graduated from high school. I was a security forces member on the enlisted side, and I served 6 years as what we call security forces, which is military police, is the most common term folks here. So I served from New Mexico to California. I served civil tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, or deployments. And then I completed my second to last tour in England at RAF Alconbury. And then luckily enough, I was able to come back home to Hanscom Air Force Base, where I finished my final 2 years of my service. As of today, I still work at Hanscom Air Force Base as a civil servant, supporting Air Force programs for communication systems and getting our special forces guys the equipment they need to do their job. Definitely interested in becoming a member. Mr. Gallagher is one of my neighbors, as I live on Hollywood Drive, so I've been talking with him and Sean in regards to this for quite some time, and very excited to support. I'll leave that for any questions you may have.
Very nice. Well, thank you for your service. And does the board have any questions for Holly?
No questions, just a comment. I'm really excited that you're interested in this, have just in the, continuing to sort of celebrate diversity on the various boards and committees. I think it's great. So I'm really excited to have you on.
All right.
Thank you.
So I can take a motion.
I move the board vote to appoint Holly McCormick to the Veterans Advisory Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Need I?
We've declared the motion carried. Congratulations, Holly, and you will also receive a letter from the town clerk's office with more information on how to be sworn in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
No
Thanks, Holly.
problem.
Thank you.
Have fun. It's a fun committee, I think. There are no town administrator appointments tonight, and the first up is the Tufts University one-day beer and wine license.
Hi, I'm Jessica Scott, representing Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine. We have a few alcohol and license permits for a few dates coming up: Monday, August 22nd, Tuesday, August 23rd, Friday, August 26th, Friday, September 30th, and Friday, October 28th. All dates will be held on campus using TIP certified bartender Jean Sagarian, who we've submitted a certificate for. The event on August 23rd is a faculty get-together ending at 5:30, and the rest of the dates are student activities, and they're all scheduled to end by 8. We have Tufts Police details.
Okay. Any questions or concerns from the board? All right, if not, I can take a motion.
Sure. I move the board vote to approve the one-day beer and wine licenses for August 22nd, August 26th, September 30th, and October 28th, and a one-day all-alcohol license for August 23rd for the Cummings School of Veterinary Medicine, Tufts University.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by roll call. Matt?
Upton, aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Need I?
Declare the motion carried. Congratulations. Have fun.
Thanks so much.
Up next, we have Chief Matthew. We're going to be covering how he's handling his appointments and his 90-day plan. He is joining us via Zoom. Chief Matthew, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
We can. So where would you like to start?
That's up to you. I know you all have a copy of the 90-day plan, and as far as appointments, I don't have too many updates on that other than what's happened just before me taking over. And that last appointment was Joe Matthew, who joined, I think it was 2 days before I was appointed. Other than that, we have one interview this week for a new member, and one member currently attending the fire academy, and also have 3 members that are attending the academy this fall. So that's my update as far as new appointments. And then also the deputy chief's position was officially posted last week and closes this Friday.
Okay. So as far as those appointments going forward, I know you and I discussed that, how possibly handling it similar to the town administrator appointments, where you kind of come in and tell the board about the appointments you've made, and we kind of take action on them ceremoniously, but just so that everybody stays in the loop and we get to celebrate the new members of the team. Is that something you're still interested in doing?
Yes, absolutely. And if it's good with the board also, I would like, if a new officer is promoted, to actually have the officer come in and meet the board. And, I think that would be something, like you said, more ceremonious, but it'd be nice to recognize them in the public eye, not just the department-wide.
Absolutely. So just as those come about and come up, just notify the board so we can get you on the agenda and do that going forward. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Does the board have any questions or comments about that before we move on to the 90-day plan? Okay. If you would like to discuss your 90-day plan.
As I said, I submitted it, and I was just looking for some feedback from the board to see if they had any questions or comments or anything that they would like to see on the 90-day plan instead of my ideas, or if everything looks good to you.
Okay. So I'll open up to the board. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the Chief's 90-day plan? Okay, I will go first. So, when I was reviewing it, I saw there was probably about 10 actionable goals. Some of them were written, differently, but, training is training, different types of training aspects.
Yeah.
So that was good to try to measure them. I know for many years now, retention and recruitment have been the number one thing that I keep hearing out of the department. And I see you have established a recruitment committee. Can you just tell us more about that, how you envision that, when you think you'll have that up and running, what you think the membership of that might look like, things of that nature?
I'm looking to do at least a 5-member committee, and have them basically bring ideas and brainstorm amongst themselves to see what, other places are doing, and bring that to me before we go ahead and actually put anything out there. Again, keeping in mind the stuff that we've already started, keep that stuff going. Yeah, and just having them a set, number of people, so that way if any other people have ideas and stuff, and it takes a little bit off my plate, because that's a pretty large thing, and it's always continuous with the recruitment. And I would like to start working on more of the retention end to see how we can keep the people we have and keep them interested.
Do you picture those 5 members being just within the department? Would you go for outside, members at large, or, do you need a select board rep, for example?
I was looking to stay within the department. I've actually had some requests from people, retired members and stuff, that seem to have some good ideas and stuff. But I would probably like to keep it within the department and try to involve more of the younger members, the newer members and stuff, so that they can learn how this stuff works, and also, again, have that buy-in.
Okay. So I'm just going to I think kind of just ask Evan a quick question. Is it that this kind of committee through the department, through the chief, do they need a charge or anything like that? So that's just, okay, I
That's
just wanted to.
the Chiefs Committee, so
Okay.
No.
Perfect. Does the board have any questions about that? Okay.
I like that recruitment was in the goals. I like that investigate starting the junior firefighter program. Anything we can do to start getting younger people interested is, bonus on my part.
So for me, Chief, that seems like a little bit more of a 180-day plan, to be honest. There's a lot on here. Right.
As I was developing it and reading through it, and even tonight, just reviewing it, I'm like, huh, that's a lot of stuff. So, and I know a lot of stuff needs to be done. And my goal in the 90-day plan is to get this stuff rolling. And a lot of the stuff won't be completed in 90 days, but
Yep.
to get it started and working is a goal to get this stuff moving.
So I agree with everything you have on the plan. My ask would be, if you're not going to complete it, if you can, in the 90 days, develop some commitments. So you
Okay.
have, you've got some things on there that are, begin this or investigate that or review that. You've got a lot of those kind of things, which are to put together future oriented activities that the department will carry out. And I'm fully on board with everything that you've put, but where you're not going to finish in the 90 days, it'd be good to have commitments on the things that you've put on here, but clearly aren't going to finish in that time frame. So that's
Okay.
one thing. The other thing that I see that's something that you could consider, and it's either for the 90 or 180 day time frame, would be to think about a more structured approach to chasing grants. So that's something
Okay.
that's been a little, I know that it's been done because clearly we've gotten several grants over the past few years. But as you start to flesh out and delegate and work on assigning different roles within the department, it'd be good to identify who's going to do what and when in terms of the grant writing and chasing piece of it.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay. Ray, do you have any questions or comments at all?
Nope, just, they've done an unbelievable job up to this point, and I just expect it to continue.
Okay. All right. So do we want to check back in like 90 days, 100 days? How does the board want to do this going forward? Just let the chief reach out to us, or how do we want to handle this?
I think we owe him a check-in, and he owes us a check-in at some point on this. So yeah, and I would like, where things are not going to be finished, I'd just like an update, and so that could happen either in a more official way with the 90-day marker, or just in a regular course of business. I'm kind of okay with either way.
Okay. Do you want to say check back in around November, kind of before the holidays, but it's touch after the 90 days, and just get a feel for how this plan's going, what's changed, what's been added, what's been modified, things of that nature? Does that work for you, Chief?
Yeah, that works for me. Either October, November, that area.
Okay.
Perfect.
And I'm sure we'll see you before then if you have any appointments or promotions or things of that nature too.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. All right. Do you have any other questions or comments for the board tonight?
No, I think that's all I had tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Up next is the memorandum of agreement for 116 Upton Street and 59 Pleasant Street. Do you want to say anything about that at all, or
No.
I'm sorry, Matt?
Yes, that's what I was going for.
I don't have much to say about it, except it just memorializes what we had talked about in my presentation and with Eastland. So there's nothing that I saw that was unexpected or out of line with what had already been discussed. So really, this is just putting it down in writing and executing on it. So
Perfect.
I'm comfortable with it.
All right. Does the board have any questions or comments? Okay, we can take a motion.
To sign?
Yes.
Do we want to do them separately or together?
I don't think it matters.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter? Okay. I move the board vote to approve and sign the memorandums of agreement for 116 Upton Street and 59 Pleasant Street.
Second.
Motion made and seconded by roll. Any discussion? Hearing none. By roll call.
Often
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Mead eye.
All right. Declare the motion carried. We had Grafton Upton Railroad on here. We are gonna pass over this tonight. We will bring it back. I know that was something you were really looking forward to discussing, Ray, but with you being on vacation, we thought it'd be more fruitful if you were in person. So
I'm not
next-
on vacation.
Well, you're right. I apologize for even thinking that you might be on vacation. Up next is the TIF with Feedback Earth, and I think we have a couple representatives here to discuss that tonight.
Good evening, everybody, ladies and gentlemen of the Select Board. We have myself, David, Allison, our CEO, and I believe in the room physically present is Andy,
Andy, do you
our
wanna
controller.
speak here?
Great. Thank you for taking us in tonight. 2 weeks ago, approximately, was our first contact with Evan regarding our intent to submit for tax increment financing. The backdrop or the context and what I'd like to share with you here tonight is as much detail as you guys want. But the backdrop is that we have, as you know, acquired the facility formerly known as Trucking about a year ago, made fixes to it. We are successfully recycling food waste into animal feed. Between now and the end of the year, we are proposing a roughly $2 million upgrade to the facility, which will enable us to roughly triple the amount of food waste that we take in. It will allow us to hire upwards of 2, if not 3 shifts of skilled labor, including foremen, equipment operators, etc. One of the elements that helps us decide how and when and the details of the work getting started, getting done, etc., is the prospect of the TIF. And we are here as, or my group, Allison and I and Andy, are here to discuss kind of the preliminary matters of the TIF so that we can see kind of like how that path evolves this year.
Okay.
So in my meeting with the folks from Feedback, we had discussed mainly the process of how you go about getting a TIF with the town of Grafton. And so I had just let David and Allison and Andrew.
Yep,
Sorry.
Andy's fine.
Andy, okay. Andy, know that the first step is to write a letter of interest to the town, and then the select board could take up whether it's going to refer that to the TIF committee for that to be negotiated and brought back to you.
Okay. So, does the board have any questions? Because
I am wondering if you guys had thought about how, like, a proposed structure. There's lots of different terms that you can put into a TIF. So, just broadly, what were you guys thinking?
I'll defer to Andy.
Well, obviously, we're looking for some tax relief over a period of time, 10, 20 years type of thing. Just it's a small project, so actually it's not a small project. It's a big project for us, but it's I'm still trying to find the full things. I know that the cost, and David can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe our cost is around $2 million increase on that. So we're looking for some relief on that to help us with some of the financing over the next few years in relations to one, building the project, and also hiring the staff to allow us to go the full bolt on it.
Okay. So, I mean, it's those details, I guess, is what I'm kind of interested in. What would make this deal work for you guys? Would it be a tax break just on the incremental value that you'd be building in there? And, for how long?
I think if we were to try, obviously doing the tax break on the incremental value, that's the way I sort of ran some numbers originally. So, and I did it based upon just the incremental values.
Okay.
That was my original things. If obviously depending on what's financially feasible for the town and what would help us out the best as well. That's what we're going to try to present. I don't want to present anything that's going to screw the town, or because then we get on a bad foot with you guys in that regards. But
Sure.
I also want to make sure that we can. It's going to make it so that we can also perform.
Broadly speaking, it's the front loaded, the relief front loaded in the first couple of years, and then have an accelerated schedule to repay it back over the course of the following X years, and X is somewhere between 5 and 10.
Okay.
So I have a question. The $2 million proposal that you have, what, if any of it, is going to go towards smell mitigation?
Um, you're referring to odor releases on our site. So the short answer is none of this money goes towards that mitigation. Smell, odor mitigation, and control is ongoing effort. It is part of our current activities right now. The monies that we are putting into this project is for the waste intake building, which generates no odors. The odors are entirely emitted from the feed dehydrating building, which already exists, is already in place, and it's a binary thing. Either it works or it doesn't. The waste building, the waste intake building, is primarily to increase truck traffic and logistics around the facility.
Well, and to speak somewhat comprehensively to the concern around odors with the facility, make no mistake, we're 110% committed to resolving that issue and making sure that it is a non-issue over the coming weeks and months. We've already put in multiple technologies to address the sources of the concern and have partnered with the Mass DEP as well as, of course, the Grafton Board of Health to set up a hotline so that we're actively, registering not only all of the complaints, but having an independent consultant going out to verify and validate that those are correct. There's still work to be done. We did have a validated odor period actually once this summer. But in this process, we've also found that, there have been, let's say, other sources of odor that we've been able to uncover and reveal and address those as well. And so I tell you this because in terms of our commitment to invest the capital to solve this, that's already capital that has been allocated. And we are going to continue spending until we get this resolved and become a good corporate citizen, in this community. And then in collaboration with that, making sure that, in parallel with that, making sure that those efforts are transparently, of course, communicated to all members of the town as we move forward. Sorry, David, did you want to say
that's
something?
Good.
So for me, I mean, that's the elephant in the room.
Right.
It's a tough sell for us as a board to consider, a tax break for a business that is continuing to generate complaints in town. It's even this week. So that's a tough sell for us. Question though. So if you triple your intake, does that mean that your production or your processing that actually does produce the odors, is that gonna also triple? Is it gonna increase at all?
The throughput stays roughly the same. It's just more hours per day. So we like this. The odor mitigation is on you correctly stated, right, on the feed dehydration process. And so if you triple the waste input, the question naturally is like, okay, does that mean that will the smells be triple as bad? And the answer to that is no.
Well, not as bad, not triple as bad. More
Opportunity to create odor.
Yeah, I mean, are you going to be creating odor throughout different hours of the day now that you're because you're going to a 3-shift system? Is it a 1-shift system? You're going to 3 now? Is that sort of basically what we're talking about?
That is the plan, yes.
Okay. I mean, I just have to be totally candid. For me, until we have kind of a clean bill of health and everybody's happy that the odor mitigation has been done to our satisfaction, and I'm just talking as an individual board member, I'm not that interested in encouraging additional dehydration activity, just for me.
Yeah, I think waking up at 1 a.m. to whatever the odors are would be very upsetting if I lived in that area as well. Is there any way for you guys to dry run this, I guess? Can you bring in materials from somewhere else and try during the longer shifts first to see if it's a problem or if you get any complaints before you invest this type of building?
I'll defer to Allison on this one. The short answer is yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know if I understand the question.
So if you build this $2 million facility, you'll be going to a 24-hour day work, correct? That's the plan?
That is the plan.
Currently, you do not have a 24-hour day work, right? work shift.
Correct.
Is there a way to dry run a 24-hour day work shift where we can see if you're bringing in all this extra material and if you're creating odors and if they're being created at different hours of the day and if that's a problem for, residents that are currently experiencing the problems?
Yeah, and David here can keep me honest on that. We've already executed multiple 24-hour shifts in the sense that we've had a lot of, let's say, flux days where we have the facility run around the clock for a period of time. And we haven't had any complaints ever registered in the evening hours during that operation. The only complaints that we've had, and David can keep me honest here, is that we've had exactly one validated complaint or one validated time period this summer issued and confirmed. We've also had, at least to our hotline, we've had 15 complaints that have been issued, and the independent consultant came out and found that it, in fact, was not us. And that information actually led to a number of other odor generators around us being identified and those practices being put down. And so, to your point of, does a 24-hour operation possibly lead to, individuals being woken up in the early hours of the morning, like 1 a.m.? We've certainly never had that, and we've run a 24/7, or we've run a 24, not 7. We've run a couple of 24-hour periods of running. We also now very routinely operate and start the plant up at 11 p.m. at night. Those are our regular startup hours, and there's never been an additional, let's say, night issuance of an odor complaint. And I know that certainly, just in terms of history, when we started up our operation last November, there was obviously a significant odor release. Specifically, there was a soy product, a tofu product that was particularly odoriferous. We took measures, of course, immediately. That was something unexpected, unexcusable, of course, but that was something that was immediately stopped, immediately worked with the associated agencies. We haven't started that kind of operation since. And since then, with that odor hotline in, we've only had one registered complaint. And so I'm not telling you this because we have a clean bill of health. 0 is the right answer, and that is what we will absolutely be getting to. The reason I just bring that up is that in terms of obviously the shift in being a continuous, burden on the community, I'd like to tell you that the technology that we've put in, the food that we are certainly not taking in anymore, has made significant progress, and we are going to bring that number down to 0 in the coming weeks and months to make sure that this is not a burden upon the community, but in fact that this food waste disposal operation is actually something that you all can be proud of. This is the only facility in New England that is permitted to take in food waste and to produce animal feed. We are the largest animal feed producers already, and we are a major staple for a lot of the farms in the area, as well as a solution for the Massachusetts food waste ban. And obviously that's our pitch. That's why we're very excited to be operating here and putting up, new facilities, new infrastructure so that we can take in more material and more comprehensively provide a sustainable disposal solution. And in that pursuit, odors is obviously the one thing that we really are keen to make sure that we do get down to it to enable that work to move forward. So I apologize for being long-winded, but that's somewhat of the context and background for kind of how we're thinking about this odor system moving forward.
You mentioned
Madam
that
Chair?
other. Oops, sorry, Ray, go for it.
Oh, so, being on economic development, we want to help out all the businesses in town and promote their businesses and encourage them to expand. I understand the smell issue. I'm in the neighborhood there and have smelled it. But I think that it would help, Feedback Earth if we referred this to the TIF committee to talk about a deal like Matt wants to know about, to find out, what the town could offer, what they could offer. And we don't have to issue the TIF or take it to town meeting unless we're totally comfortable with what's happening over there as far as the odors. So that's what I would suggest, is that we refer this to the TIF committee so that the TIF committee can get back to the board and report on what Matt is concerned about and, what kind of deal we can work out.
Ray,
That would be
what time frame do you think we'd see some turnaround from the TIF committee?
I would look, I mean, if they turned it over to the TIF committee, I would look at it in 30 days because we will have meetings with Feedback Earth and find out what they want and then find out what the TIF committee's willing to talk about. And
yeah,
but I think 30 days would be able to do it.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
So, Allison, you were saying that there was one verified instance of odor tied to the plant and 15 other ones. Where does that data go? Because that would be helpful data for the town to see as we're trying to navigate this with you.
Yes, the odor complaints as well as the reports that get generated the same day are emailed, among others, to Nancy Connors, the Grafton Board of Health.
Okay.
As well as the DEP and of course us.
Okay. I will.
we
check those out.
I'm so sorry.
No.
We've also actually recently put a letter together that basically constructs the narrative a little better than I possibly articulated just a minute ago. And we'll be sending that out shortly also to the town of Grafton. And happy to CC you, of course, on that as well.
Okay. Thank you. When you folks are sending that to Nancy Connors, can you CC me on those reports?
Absolutely, we can. And just who's speaking now? Was that Evan? Was that you?
Yeah, it's me, David.
Okay, yes, I can do that. And in fact, yes, absolutely. From here on forward, I can also send you the 16 or so that we have over the. Yes.
No, I'll get those from Nancy. I just didn't know that they were coming into Board of Health and they're not coming across my desk, and I'd like to be able to see that data.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The other odor sources that were identified, without getting too specific, were they coming from Feedback Earth or not at all?
They were not. We had complaints of septic smells, and there are 2 or 3 sites near us that are contributors to a septic or sewage type smell. We had smells of garbage and rotting. I don't want to say it was on trash day, but it was around trash collection. We also identified, or rather the DEP identified through these reports, that there was some illegal dumping in the area as well. I'll be the first to say that we haven't solved our own odors 100%. We have not. It is a tough problem, but we have made huge headway. These reports help us. We seek not to challenge them, but to learn from them and put in the technologies that you need in order for us to be quote unquote guilt free, right? We're not here to point fingers at other people. We're here to establish the best possible facility in Grafton.
Okay. Does the board have any other questions or comments?
No, I mean, for me, I think it's, I'll take Ray's steer. That sort of makes sense to me. I definitely want to support the business and I want to support their mission. What they're actually doing with food waste. There's a lot of benefit to Massachusetts and our farms for that operation. And maybe that month or month and a half for the TIF committee to work through the terms can give them the time they need. So
beautiful. I think so too. I think it's very reasonable. I actually like that plan very much.
Okay.
Very appreciated.
Okay. So, do we need to take a motion for that at all to send that off to the TIF committee?
Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we send the request from Feedback Earth to the TIF committee to discuss for further discussion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, by roll call.
Upton, aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Mead, aye.
Okay, declare the motion carried. All right, thank you very much, and good luck with the TIF committee. Yes.
So the
Thank you, everyone.
Will be reaching out to us, or how's that going to work?
Yes.
Okay, I just
I
wanted
have
to
your contact info and I have their contact.
perfect.
So
I just wanted to make sure I'm looking up for the email or something. That's all I needed to know.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, up next is to discuss regional dispatch.
Yeah. So that's me. I am going to share a presentation I put together as soon as I find. Did you log me out of this? No. Yeah. Okay, I got you. I don't want to do it. Can you let me share? Yep. You good? Sorry, 1 second. All right, here we go. So, I believe it was October of 21, or before, that we started talking about regional dispatch. And so, I began working with the chief of police, and at that time it was still Chief Gothier, to talk about regionalized dispatch procedure. Since that time, we've also had Chief Canoyer, and now we have Chief Matthews. So that side has been a little bit hampered by turnover as far as keeping everybody in the loop of what we're trying to accomplish here. But if you look at what's happening in the state of Massachusetts, the state 911 department is pushing all municipalities towards a regional model, and that is so that they can primarily save money in their dispatch grant process and the grants that 911 generates, but also to create a more efficient and effective system across all communities. So we had attended a workshop, that was the chief and I, and over in Westboro, and met with a whole bunch of different sister communities to begin talks and to see who was interested in having this conversation. So some of those communities that were there at the beginning said, no, this isn't for us. And the rest of us decided to continue to move forward. So we continued forward and started to work with those other towns in a study commissioned by the Collins Center for Public Management. There is a May version in your packet. There's also a version that came out in early August that changes some of the numbers too, which are in this proposal, but you'll also see here, or this presentation, sorry. So essentially, why regional dispatch? So the main driver of that is cost for us. So currently, emergency dispatch in the town of Grafton costs around $466,000. That's payroll benefits, OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, general fund expenses, workers' comp, and state grants. So the reason you count state grants as cost is that if they didn't come in, you'd still have to pay that money, right? To run your dispatch center. It does not include indirect costs, a 4-and-2 schedule, which we are trying to implement, but we cannot find a dispatcher to fill that last position that we need, because hiring is murder in 2022. And there are other costs that are probably in there that are indirectly captured somewhere else, right? In the police budget, in the fire budget, or whatever that contribute towards that. We also have capital costs. So right now we are in the process of looking at our radio system. The study posits that Grafton needs to spend about $2 million to upgrade its radio system. I think that's optimistic. I think we're probably going to end up somewhere in the $3 million range. We have a radio system that is pretty much 2006 vintage. It is analog, and we have a lot of spots that are not covered in South Grafton and some spots in North Grafton. We're getting a lot of interference from development. It scatters the signal, and we just aren't getting there. We also have pretty aging repeater system. Those repeaters are housed in non-climate controlled sheds, and they're pretty old. And so to that end, we allocated about $250,000 in ARPA funds, and we were able to get $100,000 legislative earmark for the fire departments to take care of the emergent needs, right? The things I just talked about. If we have an aging repeater, we need to, one, buy a backup repeater, which the only way to get them now is like on eBay because they're coming out of somewhere else. And climate control, at least temporarily, some of these sites. We need to upgrade one of our PSAPs, which I'll talk about what a PSAP is in a minute. So what we are intending to do is that regardless which direction the town winds up going, ultimately, we're making the spending we're doing today for emergent needs. We are ensuring that whatever we're putting in place has a shelf life beyond whether we go regional or don't go regional, or we're really trying to have an eye on the future so that we're not throwing good money after bad. The next section is personnel. So we spend a lot of time managing a dispatch center. And we also spend quite a bit of money, about $290,000 on personnel costs. And lastly, one of the keys of regional dispatch is economy of scale, right? So if you put 5 communities together, not every one of those communities has a call at the same time. So you can do more call management with less amount of personnel, infrastructure, and so on. I also talk about large scale events. So, Grafton has another mill fire like we had in 91, I think? 99. Okay. Thank you, Dave. Instead of having one dispatcher in the center, now you have 3 that get pulled off of different consoles, and they help manage that one incident while everybody else takes care of the other towns. And then emergency medical dispatch, which is what EMD is called. So what's in theory supposed to happen is one person is supposed to be dispatching the call, and the other person is supposed to stay on the line with the person having the medical emergency. Real hard to do with one person. But when you go into a dispatch center, the 2 dispatchers can work together to make sure that that happens properly. So why would we not want to go to regional dispatch? One is we lose our, what I would call unfettered control. Right here, we can do whatever we want. No restrictions besides what the state governs for 911 response. We can do pretty much anything we want. We can number our cars however we want. You can do anything. Once you go to a regional dispatch, you lose that. Your self-identity becomes the identity of the regional asset. And so all of the policy, procedure, numbering, what you call your station, they all become the same thing because everyone has to talk or speak the same language, right? I actually have personal experience with that. Some towns call their police department the station. Some call it central. There's another one too I can't remember right now, but that causes confusion when you're dispatching across. You shouldn't have to sit in your dispatch center and know that if you're talking to Westboro, you call it central, and if you're talking to Grafton, you call it station. So those type of things, you lose that local identity a little bit. We would lose staff, right? Because we'd be eliminating local dispatch positions. And one of the major concerns is that you lose local knowledge, right? People that have lived here for 20 years or dispatched here for 10 years, they know, landmarks, let's say, rather than just addresses. One of the other major concerns is the dark station issue. And so what that means is that your lobby in your police department would be unoccupied for a certain number of hours a day. Most communities wind up getting a clerk position that staffs the window for people that come in that need to do their LTC or whatever they're trying to do. We would have hours in which there is no one in there. And so what you do is you'd walk over and the ones that I was involved in, you walked over and pushed a button and a person answered and said, regional dispatch, how can I help you? You tell them what you're looking for. 90% of that walk-in traffic is looking for a form that you can have on a shelf that then gets put in a box for the officer the next morning. I had been involved in a study about walk-in hours and hours of day and all of that type of stuff. And what we found is that 90% of the people that are walking in are looking for a form, and most of the others were looking for an officer that has to be dispatched back to the station anyways. So the key to having a dark station is understanding when are the key times in which your residents are coming in that would need to talk to a human in the flesh that couldn't be done any other way. The other concern with dark station is you've got a domestic and the wife is running from the husband, right? Scenario, boyfriend, reverse that. One of the things we were able to do is the lobby is monitored via camera, and the dispatcher, you push the button, you say, I need help. The dispatcher pushes another button and it unlocks a door. You go in there and now you're behind the door and safe. The last thing that comes up a lot is if you have a community that doesn't play nice in the sandbox, right? So someone that is trying to be the alpha community, and just ruffles feathers the whole time can really be a bummer to the regional dispatch process. So that's pretty much the four main ones that I feel are looming. There's other ones called out in the regional dispatch study. They did a series of interviews and asked, what are the pros, what are the cons? Okay. So these are the regional systems that are already set up in the state of Massachusetts. You will see these ones here in yellow. That's the proposed dispatch catchment area that we're talking about in this particular study. One of the things that you'll hear a lot is, you'll be dwarfed by another community, or you're the outlier geographically. But if you look at what's happening around the state, take, for example, this regional dispatch here, which is Hubbardston, Barry, Oakham, and Rutland. They just took on Warren, who is completely on the other side of a regional dispatch. Chicopee, Longmeadow, East Longmeadow, and Munson are Westcom. Wilbraham, Hamden are their own regional dispatch. So that tells you two things. One, this is a mess, and the state should have done it by the county, but no one listens to me, so that's fine. But also that it's pretty much wherever you're comfortable landing. Most of these do not have they don't have anything to do with your mutual aid. They only have to do with radio, and since radio is pretty near instantaneous, you can be a pretty far ways away from where you're dispatched out of, if that makes sense. You can see that the Berkshires have their regional dispatch. That's about 26 communities in that dispatch. You'll also see, this is kind of interesting, down the Cape, and I gotta move this. You've got Falmouth, Mashpee, Harwich, Chatham, Brewster, Orleans, and Wellfleet. And you've got all these communities in the middle that aren't part of that. So pretty interesting to watch how the regional proposition here from the state is actually playing out.
So regional dispatch is dispatching cars that are Grafton police cars, numbered now,
Yep.
according to a regional regime, I guess,
Right.
framework, right? As well as things like mental health professionals that the chief's talked about bringing those on. So those would be regional.
Yep, they're all your dispatching needs come out of one. Now they'd come out of one central hub.
Yeah.
Right.
Are there any resources that are specific to the towns that wouldn't go through dispatch or would
usually animal control.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
But there are ways around that, or not ways around that. There are ways to handle that. So that if you get an animal control call at 1 o'clock in the morning, they're not just calling a station where there's all the officers are out on the road. There's nobody to answer your phone. What we wound up doing in my previous community is we went to a shift supervisor phone. So whoever was the senior person on the shift had a cell phone, and if you got an animal control call, regional dispatch would just call you on that cell phone and say, got a dog barking complaint, and then that officer could determine whether that needs to be sent out to animal control or if they're going to take care of it themselves or however that works. The other thing that comes up quite frequently is business calls, right? Calls that they're not coming through the 911 line. And generally speaking, if you have a clerk or an admin in the building, they'll wind up taking most of those business calls. But it's all stuff that has to be worked out in your actual model when you get down to the nitty gritty. Anything else before I move away from this picture?
Go for it. I have a million other questions, but
Okay.
I'll hold off.
I'm here all night. So who are our partners in this particular study? So we're working with Hopkinton, Hudson, Marlborough, Northborough, Southborough, and Westborough. Part of the conversation that we've also had is looking at, your Millbury, Northbridge, Sutton, Oxford type catchment. And we'll talk about that in a second too.
How was that initial list generated?
We said, yes, we want to be part of this.
Okay.
So we had that initial meeting. There are some places, I know, I'll talk about like Shrewsbury. Kevin Mizikar was with me at that event. I think Shrewsbury just rebuilt their entire infrastructure. So it's probably a hard sell to now go regional.
Sure.
Where we're on the other side of that equation. That's pretty much, this was basically people that said, oh yeah, we're interested in that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the Upton, Hopedale region there?
Yep.
Are they looking to expand, or are they intentionally small, or how did that one form?
No, so that one this is the regional PSAP. I believe there's capacity to take other communities as well.
Okay.
Again, so there are options here. This is this study and this product.
Okay.
And we can talk about what some of those other options look like too, because there are other options identified in the study as well. So when you look at this list of our partner towns, you'll see that there's one significant outlier, which is Marlborough. That type of population difference generally throws people off because they feel that all the resources will be sucked into the one larger community. I've personally had the opposite experience, and that is because they draw more money, and so they make the rest of the model work for the smaller communities because they're drawing that money. And what winds up happening is the PSAPs that we're at, and that stands for Public Safety Answer Point. So basically the console that you sit behind, right? So let's say there's 7 that are active. The large municipality might get 3 of them dedicated to them, or 4 of them dedicated, because the call volume in the other communities doesn't support that. But what winds up happening with a regional dispatch is when the mill fire happens, you have those other resources to pull back and dedicate to different things. My personal experience with regional dispatch has been that the larger community was very beneficial for us to have in the catchment, merely because of the amount of dollars we were getting from state 911 to improve our infrastructure.
Helps the whole thing scale.
It does.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
And I did not have, and let me be clear about this. My experience was with a larger city that had a very proactive chief who was really into regional dispatch and was really easy to work with. And so that helped a little bit too, with them being the elephant in the room, but they were really compliant with trying to make it work for everyone. I have not gotten the sense that wouldn't be the case here. I'm just saying that I think that helps too, right? I've heard of other larger cities that take on smaller communities, but they take them on more as a subscriber, which can be problematic because you have a say but not a vote. And that's different from what we're talking about here as far as our model goes.
What's going on in Westboro?
What do you mean?
Seems like they had a lot of 911 calls for their population. You look at the top 3, all around
thinking that too.
20,000, and then you got Westboro, which is almost close to the 41,000.
Yeah.
I mean, they have some major roadways and stuff too.
Oh, that could be it. Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
A lot of people shooting off fireworks.
Absolutely. All things Westboro lights up every time there's a firework. Okay. So I want to clarify one thing too. This recurring cost savings number for Grafton, I don't think is accurate. So that's based on a $300,000 annual expense, and our expense, as you know, is $466,000. So that number should scale up, probably closer to the $300,000 mark. I also want to point out this category of non-recurring savings is essentially your infrastructure costs for fixing all of your stuff. So that non-recurring savings is not a forever number, right? Scale that out for X number of years to $3 million, and that's probably where you are, and then that number would drop precipitously because now we're only replacing things, on the eaches, laptops, radios, repeaters, one site instead of everything, right? So, they're calculating total savings at 804,000, and that would be your year one number. And again, if we didn't spend any of the radio money, that 650,000 that I just showed you doesn't exist, right? That's hypothetical spending on a radio system. So just to be perfectly transparent, if town meeting voted no for borrowing $3 million to put in a radio, then it costs us $0, right? So there's two main types of regional systems that we're looking at, in this case anyways. I'm sure there's other models out there. But they're state-run and they're standalone. So your state-run is essentially exactly what it sounds like. You sign on to a state-run system, and they do all your dispatches. One of the nice things about going the state route is most of them, there's 0 annual fee, free dispatching. The downside is it's run by the state, and so when the state makes a sweeping policy change, that affects you. You don't necessarily have any direct control. The standalone district, which is the one that I'm most familiar with, is essentially a separate and distinct municipality. So the towns, right, the 8 of us would get together and say, we form this municipality, and that municipality is run by a dispatch director who reports to the governance board, which is usually made up of the TAs, the TMs, town administrators, town managers, and mayors, or their designees. And each community gets 1 vote. And so that governance stuff is all your policy-driven things and your financial decisions and things like that. Then there's the operations board, which is usually each community is represented by its police chief and its fire chief. Again, 2 seats per community, police, fire. And then, usually you have subgroups that break off from there. When I visited, I've been to a whole bunch of different regional assets. A lot of times you'll have your finance subcommittee and your human resources subcommittee, and especially when you're trying to stand up one of these districts that is its own municipality, the partner communities wind up contributing in some way to those actions, right? So when we stood up the one out west, the town's 4 finance directors would get together and they would do most of the financial work on a monthly basis for the regional asset. Because when you're just starting off, everybody's focused on the operation side of it. You don't have the time or the finances to build out those other positions that come later when you scale up. Okay. So before we go directly to questions, this document, if you read through it, has the two different versions, which are the governance model that I just talked about and the potential for state control. The other thing that I'd like to highlight here is that this is one option. There are other regional potential or possibilities rather. My concern, again, in having gone through this process, is the bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And so what I'm cautious of is that we decide we'd rather form a different regional partnership that never materializes. And so, speaking from experience, I spent 5 years trying to start a regional dispatch with 4 communities. Could never get it off the ground. We met with Chicopee and Wilbraham at the time. Chicopee and Longmeadow at the time. And the police chief and I were working on it. We were in the regional dispatch within 6 months, once we found partners that were willing to play. And so that's my trepidation, is that we have an opportunity in front of us. And as we have this conversation, I just want to be sure that if we're talking about other routes to go, that we're also making sure that these are viable routes in the long run. That's my spiel so far.
So when you say other routes, you just mean same regional framework, different towns?
Yep.
Okay.
Right. So some of the feedback that I've heard, and I've heard this in multiple communities and multiple presentations from the state, is well, I don't work with those communities a lot. I don't work with we don't do mutual aid with those folks. I found that to be non-problematic in implementation, mainly because the regional asset's still dispatching your mutual aid requests. It's the same thing. It's just coming out of a different site. The other things that I've run into that I think we would be cognizant of is what to do with employees, and there is usually. You want me to stop sharing this, Colleen?
Just so Ray puts his hand up.
Yeah, sorry. You can also think about what happens with those employees, and the way that I did it last time, or we did it last time, was everybody gets an interview. That's the guarantee. No one is guaranteed a position, and then usually there's some kind of a severance worked out. So there is a cost usually associated with that.
But if it was state run, it would be different.
It's state run. I don't think we have any say over your interview process.
We would just pay severance, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen other communities doing this and not paying severance. I'd be honest with you, it's not really who I am as a administrator, and it is never feels good to be taking away somebody's job, but the benefits that regional dispatch can bring, I think, offsets some of that.
How many staff would be impacted potentially?
So right now it's 4.
If we looked at that map, we don't have to, but how many of those districts are under state dispatch? Any idea? I'm just wondering.
I had, I had read that map and I don't remember it top of mind, to be honest with you. I can find that and make sure that.
Okay, I was just wondering how prevalent the state dispatch option was.
I think, and this is anecdotal, that it is more popular in the eastern half of the state than it is in the western half of the state. Although one interesting thing is I believe Berkshire County is actually dispatched by the Berkshire County Sheriff's Department, which is interesting because it's a elected oversight. It's just interesting how that rolls out. The Berkshires are different, obviously.
So would this, would this force towns to work together? That I might be just reiterating a question or concern that you just went through, but
that's okay.
Would this be putting Grafton in a situation where we would be working, let's say for fire department coverage, with different towns that we typically work with for mutual aid, for example?
Nope, I don't believe it would. Most of the time, your mutual aid is a separate agreement.
Okay.
And so, if realistically the town that we would work with is probably Westboro, which I don't think is a huge mutual aid partner for us. If you look at, incidents, I think if we're in that corner, yes, but I think we're, do a lot more with Millbury, and it would be exactly the same. So if that fire's on the west side of Grafton and we're going to pull Millbury for mutual aid, wherever that regional dispatch center is, they're calling Millbury to get us that mutual aid. So I didn't run into that as an issue. And again, I don't want to keep saying like when I was in Munson, because it's been a while, but we did this in this exact project. And, our biggest mutual aid partners were Palmer and Wilbraham, and none of that changed. It's still Palmer and Wilbraham.
So all of these other 8 communities are having the same conversation essentially right now.
Yep.
When is the deadline for you guys all to come back and say in or out?
So we are meeting again tomorrow. I don't think that's the deadline. It's just a furthering of the conversation, a check-in to see where we're all at. I would think that towards the end of this year is probably going to be a decide, or we'll move on without you.
Now, is this something that goes to town meeting? Does this need to get on October at all? If that's nope. Okay.
Nope. So town meeting does not vote on this. This would be a select board decision. And because the only thing that town meeting would have any control over is the appropriation.
Yep.
Right? And so, I think that it's probably low risk that they wouldn't approve an appropriation for a lesser amount for, a deal that's already kind of been struck because it's at the select board level.
What impact do you think this might have on the departments?
So, I don't want to speak for Chief Matthews. He's just kind of getting into what we're doing here. And I think we're all going tomorrow together to talk more about this. But I would think, in general, the major issues that I saw happen were, I think that in my experience, the fire department made out very well because they had the most infrastructure problems and the most dispatching concerns, i.e. Fire dispatched out of the police department, which when you go to regional dispatch, they're all just that region's dispatchers. They don't really have any issues, and we don't have that issue here in Grafton anyways, but I'm just saying that's generally something that comes up. On the police side, the biggest issue that I ran into last time was that there was paperwork that the dispatchers were doing for the officers that they weren't really supposed to be doing anyways, that now the officers had to do, which caused a little bit of strife there. But minor stuff, really. The biggest, I'll tell you personally, the biggest problem is rumor control. Making sure that we have accurate information about what's taking place.
Ray, do you have a question?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do. I read this whole thing. I know about, a little about regional dispatch. I'm not totally on board with it at all. But Evan, tell me what is the problem that we're solving by going to regional dispatch? What problem are we having currently or in the future that will be solved by going to regional dispatch?
Sure. So staffing, capacity, and financial cost.
And in turn, we lose the local comfort and the dispatchers that know the town. And we're also dealing with the towns that you have listed here.
Mm-hmm.
All those fire departments are union fire departments. And things are done differently. And I'm really concerned. One, I'm concerned why we even need this. I understand the saving of the money. That's really not something I'm interested in, on public safety dispatching. I would rather have it in our own town, controlled by our own people. And I can be persuaded, but I don't think I'm going to be.
Well, everybody can be wrong. So, no, I'm just kidding, Ray. No, I think those are.
Well, no, not me.
Not
me.
I wasn't talking about you,
But,
Ray. Of course. I was looking directly at Colleen when I said that. She's clearly wrong. No, I think that those are some valid points. I will tell you that you have some great dispatchers here in Grafton. I had some great dispatchers in Munson. I had concerns brought to me by officers that said, we are going to be dispatched by people that don't know the area. I will tell you that when you call 911, you show up as a dot of where you are. That's where the technology is now, with an address. The days of most of your go to the yellow house on the corner and hang a left are over. I will also tell you that, the biggest complaint I got was they're going to dispatch us to the wrong places because they don't know where we are. And being someone that listens to the radio all the time, before we switched over to Westcom 2 weeks prior, a Munson local dispatcher dispatched the police department to Church Street, which does not exist. And that's because they don't actually live in Munson, and even though they work there, they're not that much better at it than the people that are just looking at the technology and sending people there. I also want to just one other thing. When I came on board, everyone asked me to look at the structural deficit and try to find ways to save money on the annual budget and save money in the capital budget. And this is a very large way to do that. So if the town decides to not go that way, I'm definitely not heartbroken, but I think this is right in the vein of what I was asked to do.
I would agree with that. With the last override, a big part of it was public safety. It was schools and public safety. So to save money. But you said that the 4 positions would have an opportunity to interview at the regional. So that's positive too. It doesn't necessarily mean, they could still be our local person dispatching for us.
Yeah, one of the things that I had wound up with the other 4 communities I worked with previously, we had come up with the guaranteed interview, not guaranteed position. And that was because all of us recognize that not every community has stellar people, and we don't want to transfer problems, right? So we're not going to stand up a new regional facility and give you all of the employees that aren't great dispatchers. The ones that are great dispatchers get that opportunity, and if that's the route that they choose, they can go. I had some folks that went. I had some folks that just said, no, that's not for me. And some folks that went elsewhere. So,
Do you know where it would be set up regionally? Like if they're used to driving to Grafton right now, let's say they get the job at the regional spot. Where's that job now? Still in Grafton?
No, it seems likely that it's either Westboro or Marlboro.
Okay.
As far as in the study areas in which they said they have facilities that are either owned by the municipality or outlined in some way that would be a benefit. I can't think of anywhere in Grafton where I would say, let's, we have the infrastructure, let's set up a regional. We're not there. My last action at Westcom was to vote to buy, we bought Salter College in Chicopee, Mass, which is a vacant college that's currently being renovated for that regional dispatch center there.
I had a similar question because it seemed like in the report, Westboro was the only one that indicated that there was room to expand, or didn't specifically say there's no room to expand. So I assumed the RECC would go there. Reading through it, it seemed like switching over for fire purposes for the radio system and whatnot, that Grafton was the most woefully behind of all the towns involved. Certainly wouldn't speak for the fire department or the chief in that matter, but it did seem like a big upside for us. You mentioned that you've had these discussions or these regional discussions, and that we've involved the police chief. Has he expressed any level of comfort with this or anything in the process?
So I'd say yes and no. So yes to the idea of regionalizing. Concern with the group that we're currently looking at. Again, our police department and our fire department work with other partners more consistently. So I think that's something that would be a comfort hurdle that we would have to overcome. Again, it has not been my experience that it matters, but they might ultimately have a different decision. And I welcome their being able to give feedback to the board, because I think this is a big decision, and I'm not on the radio.
Right.
And I
So
recognize that.
when you talk about, closer coordination with potentially other towns, that relationship, I guess, there's a lot of dispatch to dispatch collaboration, I guess, right?
Yeah, to a certain. So you're saying, like, if we had a fire and we wanted Millbury to come in, they're gonna get on the radio, say they're responding, arrive, and then in theory they're either on fire ground or some other direct communication with Chief Matthew. I am not a firefighter, but whenever I've been on a fire scene, the chief usually had 2 radios going. One was fire ground and the other one was back to dispatch for, their ICS command structure and what they're requesting for assets.
Do we have similar, like mutual aid agreements with the police department as well? I know you've mentioned that a few times with the fire department, and that wouldn't change.
I will be 100% honest with you. I've never seen Grafton's mutual aid agreements. Usually they're a 10-year agreement and they get dusted off every once in a while. I'm sure they exist since we're doing mutual aid, but they haven't come up in my tenure yet, so I haven't really looked at them. I can certainly do that.
But similarly, the new dispatchers would be trained in whoever, the appropriate
Yep.
mutual aid.
Yeah,
request
usually
goes
each
to.
community has a book of SOPs that the dispatchers have and learn and are trained on so that they're dispatching correctly. Grafton has 3 stations. Not everyone's going to have 3 stations. Which station goes to which area, so on and so forth.
Thank you.
Is there a minimum number of communities to make this deal come to fruition? What I mean by that is if all these communities are having the same conversation we're having, and let's say Grafton says, thanks but no thanks, so we're out, and now they're down to 7. I guess I'm just looking at it the other way too, is if we say, yes, let's keep moving forward, and it ends up just being us, Marlboro, and Hudson, are we still as ecstatic about the deal as we would be if all 8 communities are in there?
Probably less so, I would think, honestly. But I think that, one of the things that when I look at this map and I look at the regionalized communities, there's a lot of white colored communities that are bordering all these different patchwork of colors. And what you're starting to see is some of those communities, actually, if we went back to the map, you'd see shaded communities. Those are communities waiting to get into an already established RECC. A couple of them on that map, to be fair, are just 2 communities combining. But, if you look right now, Ware is just joined into Westcom. And that was a conversation that started between myself and Stuart, their town manager, 8 years ago. So, and Ware was actively shopping around, right, into New Braintree, and what about the Hubbardston Berry, and they want to, signing up with Westcom. But I think you're going to see some of that with these other communities, because it is a big lift to get everybody together to join in. It's much easier if you can find one that you're adjacent to and sign up.
Yep.
So is it fair to say that most of these communities are more than likely going to move forward?
I'll know more tomorrow,
Okay.
but that's the sense I get. Sure.
And you're heading to the meeting tomorrow with both chiefs?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I definitely would want to hear from both of them after that meeting at some point to just get their impressions and
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
concerns and all that.
Absolutely. I would expect nothing otherwise. This was really just we have the report. Let me give you guys an update and start talking about what that looks like in reality.
Okay.
If we're discussing sitting pat, right, and not joining the regional thing, you had mentioned that part of this is motivated by the state to, as I understand it, not have to issue so many grants. Is there any indication that they'll be moving towards like de-incentivizing those grants or reducing the amount of grants available in the future?
They say that. Will they? I don't know. I think politically that's going to be a rough one. So, but that's definitely part of the push, right? So part of the push is if you don't join, we're going to be that money's going to go away. The other push is if you do this, we'll give you a boatload of money to fix all of your stuff.
Cool. So we get a boatload, huh?
We do.
Awesome.
We do. Yeah. It's a 39-foot Hatteras.
So in the regional model, then the governance would have town managers or administrators in a board,
Yep.
essentially directing a director of.
Yes,
of
I will tell you that if it's the only 2 models that I would even have a conversation with would be, we went into some kind of state-run model,
Yep.
which both chiefs would have to be 100% on board with that, or the governance model that I was just talking about. If we are a subscriber, I would never be, unless we were in dire financial straits, I would not be recommending that to you.
Sure.
I'm very much a believer in that standalone municipality I've seen it work and I think it works well.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I would have some concerns about the state-run model just for the fact that if their most predominant members are more like east from where we are, they just have different concerns and population sizes and density. And
Yep. Well, there is also, I think, and I have to confirm this, but I believe that the RECC that the state was talking about would still be the communities we're talking about. They would just be taken over by the state in a regional asset that the state would provide.
yeah, I'm thinking about policy primarily, I guess. And so
Yeah.
I think there's some significant benefit in having local policy determined by local, if we were to contemplate that.
Yeah,
So interesting, really interesting option.
it is.
Okay, does the board have any other questions or comments at this time? All right, when do you expect to be ready to talk about this again?
To be determined tomorrow. I
Okay.
think that timeline is gonna be, discussed tomorrow, and I'd like to be able to talk to the other communities and the chiefs and see what we're doing. If we're gonna look at other communities, or if that's what the chiefs wanna do, I would move. We need to move fairly rapidly because, we're gonna have to decide whether we're gonna spend the money or not.
Yeah.
I think, in the next 2 years. And if you're gonna go into a model like this, it's gonna take you 2 years, So I just wanna be cognizant of that, and cost is a big driver of this conversation.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions or comments, thank you for putting all that together and all the hard work for that.
Thank you.
And we can move right on to discussing the one-day entertainment and alcohol license. So this is really just on here because, as we keep going through these licenses and issuing them, we're learning with each applicant improved ways we can be doing that, and just wanted the board to have a conversation about what they see for the future of these licenses or any improvements that they want to suggest. Okay, so one of them that I had heard was that maybe when somebody applies for a license, why isn't the zoning on there? Well, we're not all really super educated on the zoning, and when somebody wants to do a apple pie fest and they want a one-day beer and wine license, we just assume the common is going to be fine. So somebody had mentioned, why doesn't this go out to a comment period where you can solicit feedback? And, I looked into that and I talked to some people about that as well. And I think timing on that might not always work great, especially if you were soliciting it from other committees who might not be meeting in the time period that these applicants are needing these licenses. But other than that, I didn't know if anybody else had any thoughts or concerns or comments they wanted to discuss about these licenses.
I had thought about the zone requirement. It's something that we should be aware of as we're discussing these, but aside from that, I didn't have any additional feedback.
Should we have any verbiage on here that a one-day beer and wine license is 30 days are allowable in a calendar year, so it's very clear to applicants that that's what is expected to them? Can we add that anywhere?
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't.
Okay, and when they do that, is if they're getting like 10, are they paying the one-time license or $250? Are they paying per day or the one time they file the license?
I actually don't know.
Okay.
My gut tells me it's
Per day.
per day.
Gotta be per day. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh yeah, I guess.
We should correct that.
I guess for me,
I wanted
definitely
to assume
including
it was that, but then I also didn't want to, be lying to all of you because I haven't asked that question here. But Will says that's what it is, so he can be lying if he's wrong.
For me, adding that 30-day clarity per calendar year, I think is going to be important until we have something otherwise saying that. Okay. And then we're very clear on the second page about all the things that they need to have included on there. All right. What about if the anticipated attendance is, if they exceed what they put on there, do we do anything about that?
I think it depends on where they are, right?
Okay,
So if you're talking about an outdoor venue, then potentially not,
right.
right? You're somebody's having I'll use Tufts, right? So Tufts is having an outdoor fundraiser and they expect 75 people and 125 show up.
Right.
You know, there's no fire safety issue. There's no, egress issue. There's none of that. I think that's different than, I'm renting a hall for my wedding and I need a 1-day liquor license to be able to serve indoors. And I tell you it's going to be 50 and there's 150.
Right.
Right. That's a different issue. It's a capacity issue.
Okay. Alright.
To that point,
I thought you were pointing
I know, I was
somebody
like,
over there.
No, sorry.
What is happening?
no, to that point, how would we know if suddenly a venue has 150 people versus the 50 people that they were designated for without somebody reaching out and letting us know?
So most of the time you wouldn't, but you wouldn't know that for fire capacity and all the rest of it unless somebody calls. You know, we don't have a fire inspector that just drives around and goes, "Oh, I wonder how many people are in church today," and counts. So realistically, you probably wouldn't know.
How do we know if what we're issuing is allowable? It's an indoor event. They're saying we're gonna have 100 people there, but capacity's 30. How would we know that?
So the fire department should have the capacity.
How
Is that
would we
something we
find
should
that
request?
out?
That's what I'm saying. Yes,
Okay.
I'm getting to it.
Oh,
Jeez,
okay.
people.
There was a pause.
Got finger guns
There
over
was a
here. I got
pause.
all kinds of stuff. Yeah, so the fire department should have that. So, that was one of the things. I don't think there's any need for board or committee feedback because I think it'll take too long. But I don't see why you couldn't email the fire department when that comes in and says, what's the capacity for that building?
Okay.
If they have it in their pre-plan or their run card or whatever they've got. There's probably some we don't have because they go back, and that might help catch some of that too. But the same thing with zoning.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that I don't think it needs to go to the ZBA. I think we can just shoot it to Mr. Berger and have him say, "Here's my concern with that spot." And I'm going to say 99.9% of them, if it's a 1-day thing or Tufts is doing it, not to keep saying Tufts, but every once a month, a couple times a month for their fundraising activities. The whole point of the 1 day is to circumvent the zoning, not in perpetuity, but in this exact scenario, right? Your fundraiser, you're having a backyard wedding, whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. So I think it matters less, right? But I still think it's a good check and balance to just run it by and say, anybody have any concerns with these two
Right.
issues?
Because it'd be a bummer if we're approving things and putting other people at odds and try to avoid that.
Right.
Okay. All right.
And I think those are your major ones.
Yeah. Okay. And is there something from the board that we should, notify the fire department and Mr. Berger saying, hey, you might start seeing these periodically and try to get us an answer?
We'll make a note and we will we'll talk to Cindy about that tomorrow, about the best way to implement something like that and to notify. Okay. Even if it's, we add 2 check boxes to the form that says has been reviewed by building and fire.
Well, even maybe, road closures. I don't know. We talk about the chief of police a lot of the times when there's
That's a
some
good
that
point.
too.
Because some of them do tie, they're not, that document is not asking for a road closure, but it's tied to.
Something.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So those 3 checks should be.
Yep. Fire, building, zoning, and PD.
Okay.
Building/zone.
All right. Well, that seems good.
Do we need to clarify under detail officer requirements? It just says for larger events. I mean, it's arbitrary. I'm assuming it's intentionally arbitrary.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I would agree to the intentional arbitrary nature. Again, you have 200 people pulling into a field on a back road for a backyard wedding once. Probably less of a concern than, you're doing that off of, Worcester Street, trying to get people in and out, right? But that would be something that we could flag up in that PD review is just say, you know, have you seen this, and do you think we need a detail officer? Makes sense, I think.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
Not for me.
All right, moving right along. Board and committee charge review. I put that on there after listening to last week's update on the website, and it got me thinking about just the charges and how they look different for a lot of the boards and committees, and how can we make them not, right? How can we make it easier for residents to find out what some of these boards and committees do when we're saying, hey, come volunteer, and then they can't even locate the charge to say, what do they do? Am I right for that committee? And so of the boards and committees that the select board's responsible for, there's about 36. 10 or more of them are bylaws, so we have a whole committee reviewing them, which, you know, it's not like we're going to be reviewing a 200-page ZBA bylaw. Here we go. And a lot of them have been done, you know, since you and I got on the board, so they're already done. But I thought it was eye-opening when we were going through the EDC charge and how it really did need some love on that, but even that's nowhere easily accessible, and we just did that. You know, I had to go to a select board packet to even find that, and the average resident's not gonna even know where to start. So I just wanted to maybe go through these, clean it up, so when it gets up on the website, it just looks great. And some of them I couldn't even find, like the Cable Oversight Committee. I couldn't even find that one, and I've actually had a member on that committee recently tell me they couldn't find it. So that's kind of important to be able to know where all these charges are and try to get them to look as, you know, cleaned up and as uniformed as possible, and just kind of go through that process. So I wanted to see what the board thought about that, and if they were on board, just kind of start trucking along, or get some of that information over to the website people and say, hey, make sure this gets transferred over, try to make it look like this, or whatever William suggests on how he would like to see this get implemented.
So they wouldn't reformat any documents we sent them.
No, but you were kind of doing that with the policies, which gave me that idea. So that's what this, like in the packet, how they all kind of just look different. Can we just make them look the same
And send them to them and say, you know, put this in place of this document?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
And then if you see any that are like, wow, that looks, you know, the IT committee, I think, is from 2006. I imagine stuff's changed since then for the IT committee that maybe needs some brushing up.
Charge hasn't changed.
No, as I'm saying is that should the charge be
Should it change? A whole other question.
that, and that's where I'm at. And I don't think all of them need like an EDC gut job, but I do think some of them might need a little more love than others, and some of them are just going to be a quick, make it look nice and get it on the website. And that was my thought on that. I can't see Ray if he has his hand up, which I'm sure he has lots of comments about this.
I think he
Right,
turned
this
his camera
warehouse.
off. I think he's done.
I think he's done too. I'm calling you
I'm
out.
not done.
All right.
Keep moving on.
Okay, but all right. So if everybody's in favor of this, then we'll start. I'll just tee it over to William because he's doing a lot of the website stuff, and then whenever you're ready to have further conversations about this, let us know and we can start drilling down on this. Does that work for you?
Sure. I have some time in 2023.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's gonna be here before you know it, sir. So January 1, I'm calling.
I'm thinking, you know, October or November.
So that's my only concern about this is it's the same resources as we're using for policy. Can we take a pause on the policy work while we do this stuff? Because William's working on the website.
I think that, you know, maybe in a few weeks we can talk about this again, and I can look through all of these committee charges and see how many of them are just reformatting and how many of them are really out of date, because if it's just reformatting 30 documents, that's somewhat light lifting. I just don't know the content of all of these documents off the top of my head.
Sure.
That's fair, and it wouldn't be 30 documents. Like I said, a lot of them are bylaws. So
I think in my opinion, the best way, let's let William look at some of these, and then I would like to look at setting. We'll do 2 policies a month and 2 charges a month, or whatever that. Those are just numbers.
Right.
Whatever that winds up being, that's a palatable way to break that work down so that we can fit it in between other work that we're doing. I also think that Amber probably would be a good resource to help navigate some of that as well.
I mean, for what it's worth.
Can you just come up to the, sorry, can you just come up to the mic? Oh, so sorry, players.
Come
at
on,
home-
Dave.
Players at home want to know who's talking.
It's Dave's first meeting.
He's new to
I'm
the
not
whole
used to
thing.
talking at these meetings, right? No, for what it's worth, a little side project I've been tinkering with is trying to collect information about boards and committees and how many there are, how many positions are appointed, who appoints them. I've been developing some, and it kind of goes along with what you were looking at. I've been kind of looking at the same thing, kind of goes along with the work that will be done on the website. So, yeah, I've been doing a little bit along those lines as well, and I can contribute, what I've done to this. One of many projects that
I
have
should
to
have
go
checked
on.
in with you first. I should have just done that.
Because of course he is.
Because of course he is. Why wouldn't he be?
Well, I mean, I do these little things on the side sometimes, and I don't necessarily tell anybody I'm doing them. But if it turns out to be useful, I'm more than happy to contribute what little I've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
I'm going to be Dave Robbins when I grow up.
You're Dave Robbins now.
All right. Well, that's all I wanted to bring up, and we'll talk about it again, whenever William's ready. So the next thing on here is just to vote to do the Chapter 90 reimbursement request. We reviewed this last week. We just need to take the official action, so we can just take a motion on that.
I move the board vote to sign the Chapter 90 reimbursement request.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those by roll call.
Often I.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, I.
Need I?
All right. Declare the motion carried. And then select board reports. Do we have anybody with a select board report? Okay. Town administrator report.
Sure. I just have a few quick things. So I just wanted to touch base on the 17 and 27 Upton Street project. Just give people a brief update. So as you know, that RFP was awarded to GSX. We've been working with GSX consistently. There's a little bit of a slowdown there because GSX is bringing on a partner in Beacon Community LLC, Beacon Communities, Beacon Development. We've shortened it to just Beacon around here, but they are looking to take over that project, and the benefit that it looks like we're going to receive would be a greater amount of affordability in that project. Beacon, their portfolio is mainly assets that they hold that are of mixed income, so they have a whole different model than what GSX proposes. They do a lot more with state and federal grants to make those units more affordable. And so we're kind of excited to see how that plays out. We just got them some documentation they needed last week. I know that they're actively working on that partnership and drawing up their paperwork. So while I don't have a firm timeline, because it's not our timeline to maintain, they are moving forward. So I think we would see that 2 to 3 months. I think they must be done. So, any questions on that?
So are there any procedural things that the town needs to do?
So the only thing that we needed to do is say that we were okay with assigning it and that they had met their obligations except for the special permits that would be needed.
Yep.
And I wrote that from me because the document that you sign as a PNS says right in it that we won't hinder their ability to assign. So you've already waived that condition. So council thought it was fine for me to just write and send.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah. George Hill Road. So I believe people should be out there seeing throughout the summer people on the road doing different surveying work. We are hopefully wrapping up and going into the design, like the drawing phase, and getting some documents towards the latter part of this year, so that we can then hopefully get something moving for the spring.
Nice.
So it's a lot slower than any of us want it to be, but I would like to do it right, and so we're making some progress. But 5-year forecasts, we finished up with our consultants, and our general framework is complete. So Mary and I have started working between the two of us to finalize some things, and hopefully we have a presentation put together for you for next week. If that looks like it's gonna not be a good working product, we'll push it off to the following meeting, because we want to make sure we do it right. But we do have, I think, a really nice tool established, and some really nice metrics to bank everything against. So part of the reason why we did it so methodically is that we're making sure that all of our estimates are based on the historical input that we need to use as a benchmark. So that's been quite a lot of work. Any questions on that? No? Okay. I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. In September 17th, we're gonna that's a Friday. We are gonna close the municipal center at 11, and we are having a staff picnic on the lawn, or the dirt, as it were. And so that'll be open to all town employees. We're just doing simple hamburgers and hot dogs and potato salad and chips and stuff, but everybody will be invited to that, and we'll come up. So we will close a little early, but it's a good opportunity for us to do a little staff workshop or staff get together, and then since the municipal center closes early, people can take off at 1 or stay or whatever they choose to do. So
Is everybody invited?
yes, we'll get you an invite.
Just to go back to the projections, is that something that we should have Jay or Anita in to be here during the initial presentation? I'm just aware of how much.
Yeah. Maybe.
Something to think.
Let me make sure that they're happy with where their numbers are.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what I've been using now is like this is what we're expecting somewhere in this neighborhood. Because they're working on, their numbers as well. So, but yes, anytime I can bring Jay into a meeting, he does not meet enough. So I like to pull him in and make him stay as long.
Yeah, we just, we always talk about one town, one budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you that every call that I've been on for financial forecasting, Jay and Anita have been on as well. So we're all working together on this project. So
great.
Yeah, happy to bring him in if that dovetails into what we're talking about.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Last thing, I want to give you an update on the senior center since we have a new director. I met with Shannon today. She's very happy and energetic. It's very nice. It's a little infectious. Not me. I don't get my hopes up anymore. No. So she's doing some really cool things. She's got a lot of stuff lined up with the connections that she has through PT of people coming in and doing different exercises and different projects around falls and safety and a whole bunch of other programs that she's got going on. She brought a whole bunch of these booklets today that she's gotten in, all these different pamphlets on wellness and eating healthy, and she's got a lot of ideas, and she's moving full steam ahead. So it's really fun to see, and I'm excited. And I do also want to shout out to Barb Connolly. She's been coming in once a week, twice a week, and doing the overlap trainings with Shannon. So that's a huge help too. So yeah, I'm excited to see what Shannon can do here. I was pleasantly not surprised, but just it was cool. It was a nice meeting. Really happy with what I see happening down there. So
Nice.
yeah, and I think that's it for immediate updates I have for you guys. Do you have anything that you'd like me to touch upon?
William too busy to make you a PowerPoint this week?
Yep, he sure was. I actually am reading the PowerPoint, but it's just a white page with 5 bullet points. So I figured, why share that?
All right. Thank you for the update. Anybody have anything about correspondence they wanted to bring up or discuss?
I think I just wanted to highlight we got a notice of basically looks like kind of a grand opening of the agro voltaic project that's happening on Estabrook Road. So it's a private development that's happening, but it's actually pretty important in terms of, I think it's one of the first in the state. And it's kind of in my neighborhood, so I see it on my walks and I see the trucks going in and out and all that kind of stuff, but it's actually pretty exciting. So they're putting raised solar in so that they can actually do some agriculture in the midst of the solar field, which is really cool to have a multi-purpose use like that. Previously you would take, a lot of farms would take big open areas and basically just cover them with solar. This is a way to do both solar as well as agriculture in the same actual space. So it's kind of exciting. And I think it's a great thing that's happening in Grafton. It's a pretty big development as well. I think they're talking a 4 megawatt implementation, so it's pretty big. So I was excited to see that.
Yeah.
Okay. We do not have any resignations. Anybody here for public comment? Anybody on Zoom?
Rob Giese.
Oh, you just gotta say your name and address into the mic, sir.
Rob Giese, 41 Danielle Drive. I'm just curious what was in that memorandum that you guys approved earlier for the Pleasant Street project. Just curious on what that means for the project. As far, I'm assuming it's one step forward, but because I think you've got some homeowners around the area that aren't really too happy about the project.
Sure, I'm happy to talk through it. It's so the board agreed to endorse the LIPS, and all that basically means is that the developer can then go and file their application for the development with the state to get approval with it, and with the essentially the endorsement was contingent upon some conditions that we had agreed with the developer. So the conditions are things like they're going to provide some funding to the town. So each development has a certain amount that we agreed with the developer that they were going to donate to the town. So the memorandum of agreement is what we verbally had agreed on. They just put it into legal language so that they can sign it. So if the development goes forward, they're bound to those conditions that they agreed to.
So is it just the state that has to approve now, or does the town still have to approve?
So it's a pretty long process, but what happens now is they take that endorsement from the select board, they file it with the state will come back and either sort of green light the project or send back some concerns, and this presumably the state will green light it. Then it goes to the Grafton Zoning Board of Appeals. Okay. The Zoning Board of Appeals is basically the town entity that the developer will work with to develop the actual property. So they have to go through a public hearing process.
Okay.
That's the next step as far as if the community wants to participate in what's happening as far as the development, the approvals, all that kind of stuff. The public hearing at ZBA will be the next opportunity to do that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just the other thing to mention is that in the meeting packet for tonight, if you go onto the website and go under select board and it says meeting packets, the actual documents are in there as well. So if you want to look at them at your leisure.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, and then is there anybody on Zoom? Nope, perfect. Okay, and we have a couple set of meeting minutes tonight to approve.
Yep, I move the board vote to approve the meeting minutes for July 19th and August 9th as written.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor by roll call.
Upton, aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Need I?
Okay, declare the motion carried. We have no reason to go into executive session, so I can take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call.
Upton, aye.
Roy, aye.
Jefferson, aye.
Need I?
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night,
Night all.